All right, folks, it is the end of turn 16, and this German breakthrough continues to expand. The Russians have not been able to contain it. They have just not had the mobile forces in the area to stop this drive by several panzer divisions. They've linked up now. The Russians are in a lot of trouble. Basically, these formations up in the north here, motorized, 14th Panzer, I think it's 9th Panzer, they just drive into the east, obliterating Russian opposition in their way. They left, was that Konstantinov, left it alone, just surrounded it. It'll be out of supply. And just driving east, getting as far as they can along these roads. Infantry kind of protecting their flanks. This another attack to the south. The 11th Panzer drove through here with the help of elements of 15th, or 16th rather, 16th motorized I think it is, and some, what are they? They look like 60th motorized, linking up with that northern drive to, for a brief moment, pocket all these Russians in this area. A huge Russian force. And they had established a solid line around here. The Russians launched a counterattack and they got very lucky and forced the retreat of one of these German positions here along this road. So for the time being, they have opened up this road, which is getting supplies through down this railroad/road. But look, despite the fact that they've saved some of those units, the situation is a bit dire further to the north. There aren't many Russian units. There's, 1, 2, 3. A couple of these guys are pulling back from the far north. The Russian dead pile is huge. So these panzer divisions, they're not just breaking through the Russian lines, they're destroying the Russian defenders in the process. These are not necessarily, they're not getting retreats, they're getting huge step losses on these Russians, which is just wiping out their defense. Which means that the Russians, they're not just pulling back, they're gone, they're destroyed. So, you've got a Russian defensive position here, there's a HQ under there, another position here, and then you've got 10, almost 20 hex, you've got about 160 miles between Russian positions. There is some Russian armor down here. Some of this has pulled back from the Bessarabian front. So these guys have driven north to get the heck up here and try and stem this breakout. But again, this is after the Russian response. So the Germans will be up next, and you can kind of see the lead Panzer division. This is the 9th. They can go basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They can be at the Zhytomyr, Berdichev, and there's no Russians in this whole area. So they've opened up basically a 160-mile gap in the Russian lines. There are problems behind the lines, of course. You've got this garrison, being careful to avoid them. That might cause a bit of problem for the Germans. And then there's this big pocket here, not yet a pocket. They're trying to get out of there, but the Germans are going to try. I don't think they can. Maybe they can launch an attack straight back across here again and try and pocket what's left. Look, a lot of German infantry behind the line. They'll rush to catch up as well, hot on the heels of those retreating Russians. Down to the southeast, things have been pretty quiet. A couple of little attacks here and there. This is where the Panzer division is. They did threaten to... Problem here is they just don't have the numbers. It's one stack, it's a strong Panzer division. Wherever they attack, they do pretty well, but there's not enough of them, basically. Whereas in the north, they have 4, 5 Panzer divisions and 3 motorized divisions. Basically down here, I've got the 1 Panzer division. So they punch, they do well, they force the Russians to retreat or cause some damage, and then the Russians just respond to that one threat. It's exactly the same as what happened up here. So basically, you can see they're almost already surrounded by all these Russians, and there's not a lot of other German or Axis forces to do much damage. So this is where the Germans are really focusing all their attention, and will be diverting most of their supplies. Which is another problem now. They're really outstretching their supply links. So any combat out along the front here is going to be unsupplied. Any German attacks will be unsupplied. I can see a truck there in the bottom left. 2 trucks, okay. So I might be able to get 2 attacks off, and that might let me seal that pocket once again. We'll wait and see. And again, up in the far north, the Russians have basically given up those positions up here. They're pulling away from those strong points gradually, trying not to let the Germans just rush through. But yeah, there's not a lot of Russians anywhere anymore. It's amazing how their strength has just been depleted through a month of combat. And look, in this campaign scenario, there's not this massive wave of reinforcements that they're waiting for. It's just getting worse and worse. They get a couple of replacements each turn, a couple of strong points, but yeah, they're in trouble. So we're at the end of turn 16. It's the 23rd of July. We'll see what happens. This is of course a dry turn, so the Germans love it when it's dry. They can get this mass movement. Look, if it's a mud turn up next, maybe even with a couple of mud turns, I don't know how the Russians are going to block this. Rail movement, protect Berdichev. They don't. Yeah, they're just in a bad position right now. We'll see what happens. Okay, so here we are, and this Axis juggernaut rolls on. They have this big breakthrough. They've now shifted around to the north, and what they're trying to do here is pin in all these Russians in this area. There's a bit of a gap here. This is following the Russian reaction, but most of these Russian units, the whole northern half of the Russian front, is pretty much stuck in this area. There's a little bit of a road out through there that they can kind of weave their way through, but most of these units are going to be in trouble. They are not going to be able to make it through there. There's Germans out of control. It's a German turn next again. So this is after the Russian phase. And yeah, look, they're in a lot of trouble. The Germans have captured Berdichev. They are within range of Zhytomyr and Korostin up in the far north. They're on their way to Kiev, basically, and there's not much stopping them. This is now Russians kind of behind the lines here. So these armoured units here kind of behind the Germans. They could weave their way through, sure, but again, keep in mind the Russians will be moving next. I kind of don't know what to do with these panzer divisions. The 9th Panzer up in the north. It just takes a long time for the infantry to catch up. The most advanced infantry are these guys here. These are all motorized, mechanized panzer divisions down here. So down the south, what we've been focusing on is the 11th Panzer, just blocking these possible retreat paths to the north along the Yuzhny Bug River. So holding here, possible paths for the Russians to head to the north. Elements of the 11th Panzer have rushed around to Vinitsa, and then the 13th Panzer way out in the front here, just stopping the Russians from using those roads to the north. So the Axis is basically choosing the retreat path for the Russians, and it's basically to the southeast. So all these Russians here, a lot of sort of pocketed Russians around this area. They have to retreat back down this way, and then maybe try to swing around to the north. But here's the thing, I've already rolled for the next turn, and it's a mud turn coming up. And this is probably a blessing for the Germans. It gives they do have access to decent roads, and they can use those roads to catch up. The Russians are trying to rush and trying to pull back, and now they've got mud. So right when the Russians actually wanted dry weather, there's a mud turn coming up. Not a lot of combat happening. It's just basically these panzer divisions rushing forward, spreading out, fanning out, containing the Russians in the north, containing the Russians in the south. A couple of Russian movements through here, so these guys managed to sneak through here. I don't know where they can go. They're just trying to get back into supply and get out of there. Yeah, so the problem now for the Germans is they've way outstretched their supply lines. We do have some truck supplies at the railhead here, so a bit of a dump and some trucks that can sort of get forward a little bit. Some Russians along here blocking this road, and some Russians along here blocking this southern road. Proskudov has not fallen yet, just a single unit division in there. But now we've got all these. Basically, the Russians are pulled back away from the Dniester River in the south, and they are now, if I pull the camera back, they are now trying to pull back and to the north. So all these units that were here trying to pull back, you can see them here around Shagrod, trying to save themselves basically, because if they didn't do that, then 11th Panzer would continue. A little bit of activity down in the southeast. 2nd Panzer here, keep in mind they're going next. They would like to smash through here perhaps, and then drive on and try to maybe, oh, I don't know. Well, there's this, they're in the mountains. Couple of options for them. Yeah, they could move about to, probably that's probably the limit of their movement if they decide to go that way. And 2nd Panzer's got a bit of a problem now because there's a bit of a Russian barrier to the south, so it's unlikely we'll have these two forces linking up anytime soon. But look, there are no Russians here. This is Zhytomyr is being held by its garrison. The other problem for the Russians, okay, is mandated attacks. So the Russians start the campaign with 3 mandated attacks, and they went about 16 turns without rolling an additional mandated attack. And they were thinking, this is great, we can not have to attack. And the Russians really haven't counterattacked much at all. But over the last 2 or 3 turns, they've rolled for 2 mandated attacks. And every time the Germans capture a victory point city, they're additional victory points, which is now hurting the Russians because now more than ever, they are not in a position to counterattack. Now more than ever, the Germans are capturing these victory point cities. So it's basically, the victory point for Zhytomyr, plus those VPs for the mandated attacks. Up in Korostin, there's a victory point for the city, plus those additional victory points. And there's just no place where the Russians can meet the requirements, basically, to satisfy their mandated attacks. And again, a reminder, this is after the Russian reaction. So they barely managed to rush these armoured units up into here. They were not in a position to counterattack the 11th Panzer. The Germans are facing some very difficult decisions in this area. They've blown the Russian front wide open. There is no Russian front anymore. And the big question is, what do we do next? Do we drive towards Kiev? Do we wait for the infantry to catch up? The further they push east, the further these little gaps appear, and the further they risk a Russian counterattack, and they risk kind of being cut off from supplies. And in fact, that's kind of what's happened in the north here with the 9th Panzer, those units in red, way up in the north. They rushed towards Koros, and they couldn't quite make it. They were half a movement point away from that victory point city. And the Russians pulling away from the north have kind of cut them off from supplies. Haven't really traced the supply line, but I think they're pretty close. Got the secondary road weaving from Korostin down to the south, and it can kind of come around here to this road. They might be in trouble. I'll need to really have a look at that and study their supplies. But basically, they haven't been worried because, they've been focused on blowing this Russian front wide open. So, look, there's this untried unit here. There's this decent garrison in Zhytomyr, and I say decent, strength 2, then there's nothing. So you've got 2 Russian weak sort of formations between the German front and Kiev. And a lot of pocketed Russians behind the line there. Down the south, look, a lot of infantry basically. Armour, mechanized units can get out here, out of this pocket pretty easily. The infantry is kind of straggling behind the lines, and this is not a decent front. Yeah, this is just where they've moved to, basically. Down the south, the Germans have got some other problems. It's not all good news. Way down here, the Russians launched a bit of a counter maneuver, I'll call it. And yeah, Second Panzer here might be in a bit of, I don't know what they're going to do. I mentioned them a moment ago, but they've also got supply problems. These guys, cavalry moved in, infantry moved in here. So kind of an aggressive Russian move, given what's happening in the north. And further to the south, nothing really is happening. Romanians guarding the front. Yeah, so look, some very interesting turns coming up. I'll need to think about what the Germans want to do in these mud turns. They might try to kind of attack that untried unit kind of in the centre here, just to clear out that road. They might even pull back towards Zhytomyr, use that as a sort of maybe their northern flank. I think they've pushed too far to the north, and yeah, I'm worried about the 9th Panzer, to be honest. They'll be able to pull back a little bit. They need to regain kind of control with their supply lines and link up with these other Panzer formations. We need to cut off this line of retreat here, stop the Russians from being able to pull away. So 9th Panzer will have to block this bridge up here. Down the south, things are looking pretty strong in this area. We've successfully pocketed these guys. There's not many left. Infantry can swing around, so there's infantry here, infantry there. They can flank around and contain this, which will enable all these formations. We've got 2 motorized and a panzer formation to move on. Yeah, but look, last turn, huge Russian casualties. Turn 18. I think that's the biggest factor here for the Russians, is just how many divisions they've lost, and this is why things are looking so bad. Because these German combat rolls, they're going in with big odds, air superiority. A lot of this has been supplied, and they're just causing a lot of step losses on these Russian forces, which they just haven't been able to build up. Okay, folks, so that's the end of the turn. I've got a mud turn coming up, and I'll report back soon. Okay, here's the situation at the end of turn 18. If it looks a bit messy, it's basically because it is. If you're having trouble from these images, looking for the Russian front line or the German front lines, because it doesn't quite exist. The Russians have really just pulled back haphazardly. They've tried to form a line around here. You can see kind of what they're doing here. They're going to link this up with the Kiev defences up in the north and basically surrender all that northern ground. They've got nothing in this area. These panzer divisions have driven north. They have overextended their supply line. So I've been a bit too optimistic about my ability to draw supply in these areas. I realised the mistake I was making there. So I've corrected that. They should have been on emergency supply last turn. This was a mud turn anyway, so they didn't do much at all. In fact, the Germans have just pulled away to try and get closer to their supply sources. As it stands, I mean, you've got the railhead up to here and then a major road up to here, so they're not too far from that. Along here, supplies, look, there's a major road weaving all the way through here. So next turn, many of these will be back in supply. Those northern elements are in a bit of trouble. The Russians have sort of poked through here. They're trying to escape this pocket along that road. But in the process, look, even with this mud turn, Germans, mainly the infantry divisions, causing a lot of damage to these isolated Russians. There's not many left because they're just picking them off one at a time with their strong infantry divisions. So this is where the infantry gets into the action, and yeah, they surround, even on these mud turns, They surround, and of course heavy losses on those sort of fleeing Russians in poor defensive positions out in the open. This unit here, when attacked by, say, 14 strength, we're looking at 3-1, with not many retreat paths available. So, yeah, it's slow for the infantry to move up. They're basically moving up 1 or 2 hexes this turn, so not a lot of movement. But what they have done is cleared this road all the way through to Vinitsa. So as I said, these supplies, the situation in the south would be better. Up in the north, it'll be still problematic next turn, which is, it's going to cause a minor sort of frustration for the Germans up there. There's 2 panzer divisions up in the north, I think. But look, the bigger problem, it looks bad for the Russians. You can see their line formed along here. But the bigger problem is not so much the line is broken, it's just that they don't have enough forces left to defend. Their elimination pile is huge. There are dozens and dozens and dozens. I haven't counted, but we're looking at, 60, 70, 80 more dead Russian counters over in this pile. Compared to, I can count the German Axis units, we're looking at about 15 dead German and Romanian and Allied units. So there's not long to go. I'll say that much, because the Russians just can't defend anymore. These panzer divisions basically pick and choose basically what unit they want to eliminate. And I can tell you, if the next turn is dry, I haven't rolled for it yet, we'll be looking to capture Vinitsa, to clear that road and enable supplies to get through. Going to have some problems with rail supply. As I said, we've got the railhead up here, railhead splits here, railhead back here, so that's a bit of a problem. But even look, all the attacks this turn took place without supply, I think, for the most part. And the Germans are still smashing the Russians because of their numerical superiority. They can suffer that +2 modifier for attacking out of supply. They don't need the beneficial modifiers to have huge odds ratios in combat. And they're just, look, there's no bright future for the Russians. They're not getting a big wave of reinforcements. There's a slow trickle of forces. They're losing more than they're getting back. It's as simple as that. Even when they roll well for replacements, they get 5 infantry type, maybe an armoured replacement or something, but it's just not enough to make up for what they're losing on an average turn. Even on these mud turns, they're losing more than they gain. Down the south, not much happening. Mud turn, slow movement, so pretty quiet down here in Bessarabia, Ukrainian border. We will press on and see what the next few turns holds.